Welcome back, everybody, to Joshua's Magic, a channel about the spiritual world and the ordinary world and their intersection. Today's video, we're going to be discussing some quotes from the Alice Bailey works from the Light of the Soul on the topic of the science of the soul. And so, let me just try to fix my video here. There we go. Now I'm not so blurry. Um, But I wanted to touch on last video. There was an exercise, the telepathic communication live stream from last week, where I thought of three colors. And for those wanting to participate to try to tune into what they were, I'm going to reveal the answers now. If you wanted to check that out, go back to the last video at the end there and try it out. But the answers were, the first color was red, the second color was green, and the third color was violet. But if you guessed those correctly, congratulations. If not, I guess there's more work to be done along telepathic lines. But after the quotes, we're going to have a short meditation on the soul and connecting to the soul. But for now, let's move into the first quote from this week. You can find all these quotes on Instagram and Minds. Go ahead and follow me over there if that's your wish. The science of Raja Yoga, or the kingly science of the soul, as laid down by its main exponent, Patanjali, will eventually find its greatest demonstration in the West. This is owing to the fact that under cyclical law, the fifth root race, in its fifth subrace, must inevitably touch its highest point. That point in the economy of races is seen exemplified in the right use of the mind and its utilization by the soul for the achievement of group objectives and the development of group consciousness on the physical plane. Heretofore, the mind has either been prostituted to material ends or has been deified. Through the science of Raja Yoga, the mind will be known as the instrument of the soul, and the means whereby the brain of the aspirant becomes illuminated and knowledge gained of those matters which concern the realm of the soul. Under the law of evolution, likewise, the mind being the fifth principle, the fifth root race must be intimately concerned with it, and its corresponding fifth subrace more intimately than any other. Students would do well to bear in mind the following correspondence. 1. The fifth root race, Aryan. 2. The fifth subrace, Anglo-Saxon. 3. The fifth principle, Manas, or mind. 4. The fifth plane of the mental. The fifth plane, the mental. And 5. The fifth ray of concrete knowledge or science. So some notes on the root races. It's not as straightforward as it sounds. For instance, he says that everybody is part of the fifth root, or that there are people who are part of the fifth root race in every country without exception. And these are the more people who are able to think rationally and logically and things like that. So, and this is sort of the trouble with some of the Tibetans' work is he'll say something that sounds one way, and then in a totally different section, sometimes in a different book, he'll say something that that counters that or modifies it in some way, or even seems to contradict it. So, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate in today's climate how intolerant people are of things that sound, I don't know, negative in certain ways. But yeah, so you read something like this, it's like, oh, this is so racist. But you don't see the other stuff that sort of modifies what he's saying on this. But going into the substance of what he's saying here is these sort of things play out numerically. And the fifth root race and the fifth subrace of the root race has to do with the mental principle and concrete knowledge. And when that we've amassed a lot of knowledge in the West, that's undoubtable. But that knowledge hasn't yielded to bringing the soul forth. The mind hasn't been put to the use of the soul, at least not fully, in little bits here and there. But at some point, the kingdom of God's going to be built outwardly, and that mind expression will be used to the purpose of the soul, to group achievement, to group expression. How does he put it here? To group consciousness upon the physical plane. And that'll be quite a day, if and when we can manage it. But Raja Yoga is this science, if you will. And I mean, from our perspective, it doesn't seem like a science. It's just like some person or people saying this or that. But from an esoteric occult point of view, for somebody who knows it, they're aware that this is a discipline like any sort of science. But from our point of view, it doesn't seem like a science. It's just, well, here's a bunch of ideas and sayings in a book. And if you're liking this video, please leave a like on it and help get the stream out to more and raise the consciousness of people about the soul, hopefully. But let's move on to the next quote. How is this great change brought about? How does man, the victim of his desires and lower nature, become man the victor, triumph over the world, the flesh, and the devil? It is brought about when the physical brain of the incarnated man becomes aware of the self, the soul, and this conscious awareness only becomes possible when the true self can reflect itself in the mind stuff. The soul is inherently freed from objects and stands ever in the state of isolated unity. Man, however, in incarnation, has to arrive in his physical brain consciousness at a realization of these two states of being. He has consciously to free himself from all objects of desire and stand as a unified whole, detached and liberated from all veils, from all forms in the three worlds. When the state of conscious being, as known by the spiritual man, becomes also the condition of awareness of the man in physical incarnation, then the goal has been reached. The man is no longer what his physical body makes him, when identified with it, the victim of the world. He walks free with shining face, and the light of his countenance is shed abroad upon all he meets. No longer do his desires swing the flesh into activity, and no longer does his astral or emotional body subjugate him and overcome him. Through dispassion and balancing of the pair of opposites, he has freed himself from the moods, feelings, longings, desires, and emotional reactions which characterize the life of the average man, and has arrived at the point of peace. The devil of pride, the personification of misused mental nature and distorted perceptions of the mind, are overcome, and he stands liberated from the three worlds. The nature of the soul, the qualities and activities inherent in the love nature of the Son of God, and the wisdom which demonstrates when love and activity, the second and third aspects, are brought together, characterize his life on earth, and he can say, as did the Christ, it is finished. So we got some work to do to move from the ordinary consciousness to the soul consciousness. And you have to come all these sort of lower things about your desires and emotions. You have to not suppress them. If that's where you're at and you're all about your desires, then that's kind of what's going to play out. But if you're looking for more, if you've found the world as it is to become tiring and not as engaging anymore, allowing your desires to take a back seat is the next step. And if you develop your mind to a certain extent, and there's kind of pride and arrogance in that, the mind also needs to be set right. That you don't know everything, and even if you're very good at thinking logically and rationally, you don't have the whole picture. And there needs to be a kind of humility for the light of the soul to connect into your physical brain, because your physical brain is swayed by your desires. I want something, I feel I need, or at a more advanced point by your mental perceptions, and those people don't know, and I'm smarter, and stuff like that, and more subtle than that. Some of those things I said were a little bit of a caricature, but more subtle ego and pride sort of things. But when those things can be put in their proper place, when the emotions can be quieted and allowed to occupy the place they're meant to, and the mind can act be increasingly as a servant to the soul, then there becomes this opening in your brain consciousness for the light of the soul to pour through. And when you've got some of that in there, you'll have some guidance, and you follow that, and in following that, the light grows, and you have that consciousness on the physical plane of the soul. So move on to the next quote. And by the way, in Light of the Soul, which is a Tibetan going through these listings of what Patanjali wrote, he translates them into English and then explains them. And I think Alice Bailey also added her explanation. So it's more of a synthesis than some of the other books, whereas it's just dictated to her by the Tibetan. But this is number 44 on the list of writings or sayings from Patanjali. So 44. Spiritual reading results in a contact with the soul, or divine one. This might perhaps be more literally be translated as the reading of symbols produces contact with the soul. A symbol is a form of some kind which veils or hides a thought, an idea, or a truth, and it might be laid down, therefore, as a general axiom that every form of every kind is a symbol, or the objective veil of a thought. This, when applied, will be found to refer equally to a human form, which is intended to be the symbol or made in the image of God. It is an objective form veiling the divine thought, idea, or truth, the tangible manifestation of a divine concept. The goal of evolution is to bring to perfection this objective symbolic form. When a man knows that, he ceases to identify himself with the symbol, which is his lower nature. He begins to function consciously as the divine inner subjective self, using the lower man to veil and hide his form, and daily dealings with that form so that it is molded and wrought into an adequate instrument of expression. The idea is also carried forward into the daily life in the attitude of the man to every form in the three kingdoms of nature, animal, vegetable, mineral, that he contacts. He seeks to see below the surface and to touch the divine idea. So when you look at things symbolically, you're moving past the outer form. You're moving to the meaning or the essence or the soul behind a thing. And this is very common with dreams. There's dream interpretation. So that's one of the most common forms of looking at things symbolically. But if you look at your physical vehicle as a symbol, if you look at your interactions in life as a symbol, and what's the essence there? What is the reflection of the meaning there? You're bringing your consciousness more alignment with the soul, which isn't as concerned with the form as it is with consciousness with the group. And so that's one important way of establishing that link between you and the soul and strengthening it once you have established it. And the next day's quote is, "The one master is found within. It is the soul, the inner ruler, the thinker on its own plane. This one master is a corporate part of the whole, of the all soul. Each expansion of consciousness which a man undergoes fits him to be a master to those who have not taken a similar expansion. Therefore, mastery being achieved, there is nothing speaking in terms of the human kingdom to be found except masters who are likewise disciples. All are learners and all are teachers, differing only in degree of realization. For instance, A, aspirants to the path are disciples of lesser disciples. B, probationers on the path are disciples of higher ones. C, accepted disciples are the disciples of an adept and of a master. D, an adept is the disciple of a master. E, a master is the disciple of a Mahatma. F, the Mahatmas are disciples of still higher initiates. G, these in turn are disciples of the Christ or of that official who is at the head of the teaching department. H, the head of the teaching department is a disciple of the Lord of the world. I, the Lord of the world, is a disciple of one of the three planetary spirits who represent the three major aspects. J, these are again disciples of the solar logos. It will be apparent, therefore, to the careful student how interdependent all are and how the achievement of one will profoundly affect the entire body. Discipleship can be regarded as a generic term covering all those states of or conditions of being in the fourth and fifth kingdoms, human and spiritual, wherein certain expansions of consciousness are brought about through specific training. So these expansions of consciousness or initiations, and there's minor initiations that maybe happen every day, but then there's the sort of major 5 initiations he talks about in these books also. But regardless of what you're talking about, when you've attained a certain level of consciousness, you can then help others on the path in seeing that realization. And he points out this chain of being that, you know, you've attained one step and you can help people below you, but you're sort of a disciple to somebody who's attained the next step. And there's this whole chain of being, this hierarchy that characterizes the spiritual hierarchy. And when energies flow through that, you know, from the solar system or cosmic sources, it affects everybody throughout the chain. And so you see that interconnection played out there. So the final quote, this one is on Minds because it was a little too long to fit on Instagram without putting a comment on it, which I like about Minds. There's not a kind of character limit, at least not that I'm aware of. 2, this union or yoga, the union with the soul, is achieved through the subjugation of the psychic nature and the restraint of the chitta or mind. The follower after union has 2 things to do: to gain control of the versatile psychic nature and to prevent the mind from assuming the many forms it so easily does. These are frequently called modifications of the thinking principle. These 2 produce control of the emotional body and therefore of desire, and control of the mental body and therefore of lower manas or mind. The student should remember that uncontrolled desire and an unregulated mind shut off the light of the soul and negate spiritual consciousness. Union is impossible as long as the barrier exists, and the master therefore directs the attention of the student at the beginning of his instruction to the practical works to be done in liberating this light, so that it may shine forth in a dark place, i.e., on the physical plane. It should be borne in mind that, occultly speaking, when the lower nature is controlled, it can manifest the higher. When the second aspect of the lower personal self, the emotional body, is subjugated or transmuted, then the Christ light, the second aspect, egoic, can be seen. Later on, its light Later in its light, the monad, the Father, the One, will stand revealed. Equally, when the first aspect of the lower personal self, the mental body, is restrained, the will aspect of the ego can be known, and through its activities, the purpose of the logos can be recognized. And so when he says ego or egoic, he's not using the term the way we do in psychology today, but he means the soul. That's what he means by the ego. There are certain lines of least resistance in the spiritual life. Along them, certain forces or energies are released. A, emotional, intuitional, Buddhic, monadic, to the heart of the aspirant. B, mental, spiritual, or atmic, logoic, to the head of the aspirant. The student is therefore given the word of restraint or control as a key to all his endeavors. The chitta is the mind stuff, the mental body. The faculty of thought and of thought form making, the sum total of mental processes. It is the material governed by the ego or the soul out of which thought forms are made. The psychic nature is the kama manas, the desire mind, the emotional or astral body, tinged faintly with mind, and is the material clothing of all desires and feelings. thereby they are expressed. These two types of substance have their own line of evolution to follow, and they do so under the logoic plan. The spirits or divine sparks are imprisoned by them, being first attracted to them through the mutual interplay of spirit and matter. By the control of these substances and by the restraint of their instinctual activities, these spirits gain experience and eventual liberation. Thus, union with the soul is brought about. It is the union known and experienced in the physical body upon the physical plane of densest manifestation through the conscious, intelligent control of the lower nature. So again, we have the importance in developing the soul consciousness of restraining the psychic, emotional nature and the ever-changing aspects of the mind to get those under control. And he makes a statement that the uncontrolled desire and irregulated mind shut off the soul and negate the spiritual consciousness. And I have a sort of modification to that. He may talk about this in another part I'm not aware of. But I think once you've established a clear enough connection to the soul, there's almost like a chamber or a place within you where it resides. And if your mind's going off, and if your emotions are kind of out of control, you still have that place within you. It might your mind and emotions might be pressing up against that, but it doesn't kind of go away. This is my experience anyway. And it's easy to tune back into that and not get carried away by the mind and the emotions. But when you're building that bridge, that antakarana, that consciousness in the physical brain, uncontrolled emotion and irregulated thought that gets in the way of building it. But once you've built it, you have a little bit of a bulwark against those things and can even control them better. So I hope you guys enjoyed these quotes today. Let me know what you think in the comment section and if you have any questions. But we will move on to the meditation portion of the meeting here. So just take a minute to relax, sit back in your chair or lie down as you choose. And feel free to pause the video if you need more time. Breathe in, breathe out. Take 3 deep breaths, hold them and release. Allow yourself to come to be aware of your emotional states in the moment. Experience them, feel them clearly. And when you have an awareness of it, when they're clear to you, allow them to fall away. Allow yourself to let go of them. And having let these fall away, become aware of your mind. Is your mind thinking of things? Is it distracted with daily life? Is it focused on this or that? Allow the thoughts in your mind to quiet. Don't try to force them to stop, but allow them to peter out. And set an intention on achieving contact with the soul. With that intention, see a light from your soul shining down and coming into your brain and illuminating a space there, its own personal corner of your brain consciousness. And take a few minutes to let that light shine through and establish that link. And having strengthened that link, seek to become aware of what message the soul has for you at this time. And if there's a need for healing in you, allow the soul to begin to do some of that healing work. And the energy of the group of people who are meditating on this at this time and in the future on this video, so that the soul and the group can heal those who need it and who are tuning in. And when you're ready, come back to your ordinary waking consciousness. Feel free to pause the video if you need more time. But that'll be the end of the live stream for today. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It means a lot to me that I'm able to reach some people with these ideas and hopefully stimulate them further spiritual progress. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like on it. Consider sharing it with somebody who might appreciate it. And if you've seen a few of these and appreciate them, consider subscribing. But till then, this has been Joshua for Joshua's Magic, and I'll see you in the next one.